I'm Chris. I'm a case manager here. Also help out on the front desk a little bit as needed. Started back right before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Back when you were the volunteer coordinator, I was in your first. I heard you talk about Citygate earlier, and I was when we became Citygate certified, and I was yelling. I knew the answer. I was like, it was like March of 2020 because I remember it was when you had to first start doing the volunteer orientations as part of the certification. And I was in your first volunteer group. So
we used to do those together for a time.
So I did it, and then COVID happened, and then it obviously changed everything. And so I was doing the food run at the time, and after that, started as an intern during undergrad, and then was offered a position in case management. After that, like December of 21, we just did this because of a resume. So then ended up going to grad school, finished my master's in social work in policy and practice, and stayed on here in case management. And I'm here primarily on the weekends now. So, so just meeting with folks, trying to help them in whatever capacity they need. Specific. See, probably about, I think it's 12 to 14 residents on the weekends. Obviously, there's kind of limited stuff we can do on the weekends. A lot of services are closed only Monday through Friday, but some of our folks work Monday through Friday, and so the weekends are kind of the best time to meet them. So it kind of helps me to meet with them, helps our weekday staff not have to miss folks, so we can still try to see everybody regardless of where they're at and what they got going on.
I remember now that it jogged my memory now that you said that, but I can remember doing our volunteer orientations together, and we would talk about how we both kind of started as volunteers, and then we kind of leaned into things, and it turned into an internship and then a position with you, and it's kind of similar without the internship for me as well. And we've talked a good bit about volunteering so far this evening, but I think that's one of the really incredible. A handful of our staff now have started off as volunteers. So you work now in a kind of a case management role. You've studied, at multiple levels, social work and things like that. Tell us why, what drew you to this field? What encouraged you to study social work, and what, keeps you in this kind of line of work?
So I don't even know if I've ever told you this. I started, so I was a restaurant manager for about 15 years. I was restaurant service for about 20 years. It's the toughest industry I've ever worked in by a lot, including this one.
Wow.
And tough for different reasons. But I went back to school because I just felt like there was more that I could do. Food service is extremely noble and important, and we all have to eat. But I just felt like there was something a little bit more fulfilling for me out there. And so I went back to school actually with the intention of going to seminary. So I don't know. I don't know that I ever told you that. With the intention of going to seminary. And then when I was there, Professor Larry Friedenberg at Laurel Ridge kind of chatted with me, and I realized that especially after managing bars for years, that I did better with people that you might find in a bar than you might find in a pew, personally. And we all have different callings and different gifts. And I think mine is with folks, out on the street versus you might find already kind of converted in a church. So it was just kind of moved into human services and social work. Did an internship with Northwestern, and then eventually here. And there was it was actually in undergrad at Liberty. We read that book, Under the Overpass, which Brandon is kind of cited as being his reason for doing his rescue ride. And, kind of working here and interning here at the time, it really kind of married a lot of that together. But it just felt, it felt rewarding and fulfilling. And now obviously I work for a government agency, and it's great to keep that in perspective, because the work that I do is very high level. It's very programmatic. It's I don't ever really speak with anyone in the general public, and what it allows me to do is see that there's still a need, and that you can get. It's pretty easy to get high in your ivory tower and forget that there is actual need, and there are people and faces. It's not just statistics and numbers and budgets and things. So it's
Yeah.
a good grounding for me, but then also reminding me of why the work I do there is important as well in a different way.
And I know you mentioned that, currently you work for a government organization, and while it's not directly in social services, I've asked this question to a couple of people who I was sitting down with earlier. What role do you feel like, and how can government organizations best collaborate with nonprofit organizations? Like, I know that you worked with Department of Social Services, right, with the time. And so how do you think government organizations and different supportive services can also work with nonprofits in a way that best serves?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I think when you're looking at different levels of government, the answer changes. So with being with Department of Social Services, I mean, there was a resident that we had here who came directly out of foster care, which is, super sad. He didn't even finish high school before he came to us. He was in a group home. And then once he aged out, is the phrase that they use, he was asked to exit the group home. And then he came here. Now, what helped with the transition for him and for the rescue mission at the time was I knew his caseworker very well from my time at DSS, and she and I communicated and collaborated, and we knew each other. We knew how we operated. We knew that, it kind of breaks down sometimes there's niceties, or sometimes there's misrepresentations, unfortunately. And when you've kind of gotten all that out of the way, it really just streamlines the process when you have a face and a name. And I think at the very least on a local and even a state government in that facility, in that capacity, is streamlining the process helps everybody. It helps the folks working, but more importantly, it helps the folks who are being, served, in our case, our residents. And I think on a local level, again, even a state level like that, it's a local branch of our state government. I think that to me is probably the first thing. I think budget and money is the number one thing that comes to people's minds, but I think that it's very undervalued, that importance of relationship, because the folks that work at the DSS office are from our community. Like, they're members of our community too. It's not, I work 15 minutes away for, in the federal facility, and a lot of the folks are also from the community. But the work we do is pretty detached. However, with that said, they do still promote community service. They do still promote local giving during, like the end of the year and stuff, when you have tax liabilities you're trying to lower. And then also in the capacity of, they have grants for nonprofit grants that they'll send to us to potentially send out to local nonprofits as well for grant opportunities. And so I think that's what looks a little bit different. In my experience, the federal government, it tends to be a little bit more about the purse strings, whereas I think the local government, the state government, may be able and better equipped to get involved in a more direct capacity.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm currently studying, or working towards my master's in public health, and that's one of the things that we kind of talk about is what role do different public health care providers at the national, state, and then the local, levels play, and then we also bring in nonprofits, because nonprofits have such a large role to play, kind of also in the public health sector, which I would say social services is kind of under that public health overall kind of large umbrella as well, and vice versa. What are some of the things that you have, because when did you started in 2020
here?
Yeah.
So I started volunteering in March of 2020, and then I started interning in August of 2021 and started employment in December of 2021.
2021. Okay. What have been some of the things that you have seen change within the organization in that time?
A lot.
Yeah.
We used to joke that Brian would be knocking out a different wall or moving a desk. Like, don't take vacation, because when you get back, your desk will be moved.
Or your office is moved.
Right.
Yeah.
But more than that, to me, the biggest, easiest change to see anyway is actually the cafe. Is I think you'll remember, as silly as it sounds, things like this painted behind us, the flooring, the aesthetics of things can completely change a space and the feel and everything. But then not only that, I think a bigger piece of that is sometimes, I'd say it's like the four-door truck. Sometimes there's these things you're like, why didn't we think of this sooner? And to me, the biggest one now is folks coming in to sit down and eat. It used to be, we would just say, oh, how many, to-go boxes do you need? And, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that model. I think we're fortunate enough to have the capacity to be able to invite folks in to sit down and eat. So why not? And I think we've I think you see that pay dividends to residents, because they get to socialize and commune with folks that don't necessarily live here, which is important. But then also some of the residents who we've had come in are actually, we have met through the community meals. I know there's one here specifically that comes to mind too, actually, and there's more than that for sure, but who I met through community meals and are now residents here. And I think that it opens another avenue to start the conversation. And I think in our line of work, sometimes that can be the hardest thing to do, is to initiate that conversation, and to, people can see what the rescue mission's about. If they're a little ambivalent, they're not sure about it, they can actually come in and see, hey, this place is, maybe it's not for them. Or they can say, hey, this place, they do what they say they're going to do, and at least give them a microcosm of an experience of what they may do if they decided to come in. So I think that it's great for us and great for them too, because it just really kind of allows that connection to begin in a different capacity, other than folks who are, they may not quite be at rock bottom, but they're pretty close, as opposed to the model before. We were kind of only meeting people at rock bottom. And I think the more people that we're able to serve, obviously, the better.
Yeah. And so for those of you who may be watching and not completely sure of what kind of services like we're talking about. So Winchester Rescue Mission has a food ministry program, and it's all made possible. We partner with Blue Ridge Area Food Bank, and they kind of act as a liaison between us and different grocery stores and food providers, which, Chris, you started as a volunteer doing partner pickups and things like that. And I think prior to COVID, we would serve a community meal. So we would invite individuals from the community in to come sit down, have a meal with us. And I think we would do that sometimes for breakfast, and then also do it for lunch and dinner. And then COVID threw a monkey wrench in absolutely everything that I think in all sectors, did. And it really impacted the way that we were able to do things. And so when in the kind of spring of 2020, we shut down our community meals, but we were still, again, because of the generosity of our volunteers and our donors, we were still able to operate our community meals, but we would just pass things directly out the back. But even when it came, it was 2023, I think, maybe the beginning of 2023. I'm getting my years mixed up, but we really took a look at, why are we actually doing what we do? Like, what is the main purpose of what we're doing? And it's not just food. It is, like you were mentioning, like the ability to, see somebody and have a conversation and build relationship with somebody. And I think food, and you didn't even, we haven't talked about that. You were incredibly talented in the kitchen, and you love, yes.
Hopefully never again. Only at home.
Yeah. And there's such a spiritual element in sharing food and sharing it in a dignified and intentional way. And I remember I was told, and I was called into the office to look at the security camera at the back, and there was a line of people standing out back, and it's pretty cold at this time when I'm looking at the camera. And this person was like, "What do you see?" And I was like, "People in need of food. Like, we're getting ready to serve dinner." And he was like, no, what do you see? And I was like, "I don't know." And he's like, and it's going to sound harsh, but he was like, "It's hate on a plate. You might remember this." And that hurt me. I was like, "Are you kidding?" I was like, you're calling this hateful? And then I kind of, it took me a little bit to digest. And I was like, but if we're simply just passing out food, it's really not what is like at the root of what we're trying to do. So I think we significantly wanted to shift how we serve food, and we re-invited. I think it was just a couple weeks after that conversation that we reevaluated. Okay, how can we do this safely? How can we do this intentionally? How can we set up this space as best as we can with a number of things as factors, the safety of our residents or staff or volunteers, those kinds of things. But navigating all of that, and elevating the space. I mean, what's painted behind us comes from our our program values. So I would agree. I think the aesthetic of the rescue mission has significantly elevated over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think Brandon, he said a phrase earlier. I was listening a little bit, and he said a phrase. He said, "Soup, soap, and salvation."
Yeah.
And he said, "We're not here to do soup, soap, and salvation." And I think when you kind of break it down and you see that that's an example of that, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with those three things, and in fact, arguably, like, they are incorporated at the rescue mission, but that's not, as Brandon was saying in that example, it's not all that's done. And I think, again, to me, like the four-door truck, it's like, why didn't we do this earlier, kind of thing. And now that we're here, I mean, I don't want to speak for you or the organization, but it's like, why would we look back? Like, why would we, it would take something very serious, and hopefully nothing that would ever happen to reevaluate going back to that model. And I think to your point of bringing up, like, constant, gradual, because it wasn't just one day. We opened the back door, everybody came in, and suddenly everything was great and hunky-dory. There were growing pains. There were different things we needed to figure out for security and safety. There were different things that we need to figure out logistically, even as something simple as where the line starts, right? That changed. And I think understanding that, like, everything needs to be viewed as like a work in progress. And I think that's something that we do very well. And it has helped, to your question, how the rescue mission has changed over the years, because everything is a work in progress, and it may be one little tweak here and one little tweak there. But now, currently, we have a great model of, folks coming in, how to line up. And the other nice thing is there's the familiarity, the regularity, and the scheduled nature for them as well, so they know what to expect. And at first, you're going to have this is weird, why are we doing it differently? The example of where the line starts took some getting used to, because they'd done it one way for so long. But then, now it's kind of, and even for our volunteers, because some of our volunteer groups only come in once a month, this may have changed 3 weeks ago. So for us, we're like, well, why are we doing it this way? It's the first time they've been back since it's changed. So kind of keeping that in mind, and understanding that progress is not a singular event, that it's a repeated and sometimes adjusted. And I think that's something we do pretty well here.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, gosh, we've in the February will be 7 years that I've been with the mission, and I think that it's been incredible to see how the rescue mission has changed with its programs, with us opening new programs, our women's shelter and things like that, and expanding our food ministry. I mean, I can remember we served lunch only once a week when I first started, and then it expanded to twice a week. And then we, got to the point right now where, I mean, we're serving meals, we're serving lunch and dinner every day of the week, every week of the year. And so that's just been really a really fun thing to be a part of, and just see the ability to expand and the flexibility to expand in that. What would you say is one of the most rewarding parts of working at the mission?
I think for me, there's a personal answer, and then there's more of a professional answer, I think. And the professional one would be more of a, so, I mean, I guess they're both personal. So I was fortunate enough, that my parents were both in my life growing up. It's a child of divorce, so it wasn't perfect, and no family is. But understanding how important a relationship is, I mean, I think that's in social work, obviously, but then it was really reaffirmed with my social work education. And being able to have that relationship, I think I've heard you say it before, I know others have said it, that a lot of what we do is working with folks who may not necessarily be in a relationship, that, social relationships, familial, all kinds of stuff, and helping, hopefully mend broken relationships and form new ones. And I think that is a great thing that we do, and understanding that a lot of what I have in life is luck, and then, hard work after that. But I think that it starts with my lot, with my family, with folks who are still in my life, with my friends, and that, when you look at the idea of grace, right, like it's undeserved, and that a lot of my successes is, like I said, I've definitely worked. I mean, I worked 50 hours a week and went back to school full time. So I'm not going to pretend that I didn't do my effort, but I also understand that I was put in a position to do that. I got my start in the restaurant industry because my stepdad was tired of me laying on the couch in the summer and made me go wash dishes. Like that was not my own choice, right? So, understanding that, and then, I think the other side of it is a reminder. There's a guy who will come in for meals that I graduated high school with. And there's folks that I've met at the mission who will come in or have been residents that I've known. I've been in Winchester as a bar manager again for a long time. So I've met a lot of different folks over the years in different capacities. And then to see them, it really, there was actually even a gentleman who I didn't realize who he was, but he previously employed one of our residents that I'd worked with. And he's like, "Oh, you remember so-and-so?" Like, "Yeah, I used to, used to do this with him." I was like, "Oh yeah, actually I remember, how you been?" He's like, "Well, not great." He was coming in for a community meal. And it's also just a reminder, that A, how fortunate I am to have the lot that I do and try to help others and take advantage of that, but also that like this could easily be any of us, with one or two wrong, situations happening in life. And it is a reminder sometimes that to try to stay humble, to try to stay motivated and continue to do the right thing, because I think it is easy to get complacent. It is easy to take what you have for granted or think that you're owed things, and we're not.
Yeah. One of the things I will mention, Daryl is watching, and he did say,
Daryl, Roll Tide.
Daryl Dean. He's watching, and he did say, "Hey, Lauren and Chris, nice to see you guys are doing a great thing." So,
well, tell Daryl he owes me a phone call. He was supposed to call me the other week. So, Daryl, now that I know you're watching, I expect that phone call sometime here in the next week. So he called me a couple weeks ago to catch up, and he had something going on. I said, "Well, you better tell me how everything goes." And he, it's probably because the Cowboys are out of the playoffs.
Yeah,
so he's probably just tucking his tail and not wanting to be seen.
And I don't.
Alabama and their college football anyway. So sorry, Daryl.
Yeah, sorry, Daryl. Tough luck. I think one of the things that, and you and I have discussed this word before and kind of what it means, and I think you do this so well, both personally and professionally, because I've gotten to know you in both, is the word of honor, and what honor is and what kind of that embodies. And so talk a little bit about what honor means to you and how you do that, because I think you do that so well, Chris.
I appreciate it. I actually just did a wedding this fall, and honor was like the word that because talking to the couple, they really reminded me of this.
Love that.
Great couple, and then even just with their families and stuff. But kind of stolen from Andy Stanley, so I'll give credit where credit's due. But the example he gives is if your cousin or your brother or someone's running late for dinner, if I invite Lauren over with Fletcher for dinner with me and my partner, I say, "Hey, you guys want to come over for dinner?" and Lauren's 15 minutes late. This is the example that Reverend Stanley gives, and he says, you would be frustrated. You'd be like, "Man, how dare you? Like, you're going to be late? Like, you know how important and valuable time is?" He said, "But, if Brad Pitt or, I don't know, maybe Timothée Chalamet for some of our younger viewers, if they were 15 minutes late, you'd be like, 'Oh, no, it's okay. Don't worry about it, Timothy. Don't worry about it. Brad, I'm just honored that you would show up." He said, "But we're not honored for the people that show up in our lives every day. We would be honored if this celebrity, if this person of stature would even grace us with their presence, but we don't honor the folks who we see every day." I think honor to me is important because it's about, I think it's a word that we've kind of forgotten, and we use when it comes to the military, appropriately so. We use, you hear it at weddings. Again, it's a great word for weddings. But it's also how we treat one another, how we speak to one another, how we speak about one another or don't speak about one another. And to me, just the idea of honor is being able to show up for people, to have integrity, to do what you say you're going to do, because that also shows them, to me, it shows them how you perceive their value, right? Like if I tell you that I'm going to do something with or for you and I do it, that shows you that you're important to me in some capacity, right? But if I don't do it, it may give you the impression that you're not important to me, right? It doesn't honor you. And honor is about building one another up. And we do that by showing up. We do that, when it's hard to show up. Obviously things come up and we can't, but we really just do that in the way that we appreciate one another, that we show our appreciation. I know you and I have joked about the different ways that we receive compliments and or don't receive compliments. The love languages. This is a popular topic of how giving and receiving and all of that. And that's how we honor one another. We learn each other's love languages, and then we talk to one another in that way. And whatever capacity is appropriate. Love has a pretty clear connotation, but agape love, right? Like godly love and familial love, and talking to one another in a loving way, and being quick to apologize. What is James is quick to listen and slow to speak, and trying to make sure we do that when we're frustrated with one another, and we honor one another by making sure we take the time to do those things to really give people the benefit of the doubt and a generous interpretation of their words.
I love that. I think that you do that so well, just as a friend, and I've seen that be extended in your volunteer role when you were an intern, and then definitely now. Absolutely love that.
You as well.
Yeah,
as well.
I appreciate that.
A great verse of James. I don't know I'm not a verse memorizer, but that was not something I've been gifted at. Lots of note taking in college. Where he says that we honor God with our words, and then with the same tongue we curse those made in His image. And I think that that's an important one to remember, especially with the work that we do, because a lot of folks, have been discarded or have been just forgotten about or anything, and making sure that we talk to one another in the way that we would talk to God given the opportunity. So,
yeah. I think that's so good, and I think like that can be a little uncomfortable for people, right? Like you're stepping on some people's toes, and ours too. Our own thinking and things like that. So no, I think that's so good, so good. Well, thanks for chatting with me.
Yeah, thank you.
I've got to. I don't know how long you're sticking around. You want to?
I gotta work in the morning. We'll see.
Okay.
We're probably all gonna have to go back to work here every day soon, I hear. Yeah. But we'll see how that pans out. So I might be for a little while. I don't want Sam to get lonely and bored over there.
Okay.
But yeah, I might hang out for a little bit.
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah. Thanks.